It is a privilege to have been asked by the Clark family to speak this afternoon on the influences Mingo Clark had in my life. He truly was my mentor. There's so much discussion in the media today about carbon footprints, that they last forever, and whatever you put out into cyberspace remains out there. Well, before the computer age and before carbon footprints, Mingo Clark was a visionary among us who left footprints to guide his many students. Many, many years ago, and I mean many, many years ago, just a few days into the school year, maybe 2 or 3 days after school had started, an opportunity arose to place students from Huntsville City Schools, including Council High, into a part-time work-study type program at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. Dr. Clark approached me about the program, but I wasn't interested. I was looking forward to having lots of fun in my senior year, no more curfews, getting to go places and to date. I was unwilling to compromise and had no consideration of the offer. But Dr. Clark was very polite and suggested that I discuss the position with my parents and get back to him, which I did. I talked to Mom and Dad about it, and they said, well, it was okay with them if I wanted to remain a full-time student. So I let Dr. Clark know I was not available. Then a couple of days from then, my parents and I were sitting in the living room watching TV. It was early September, so it was really hot. And it was before our central heat and air was the front door being open. So we heard this car come up outside. And I went to the door and looked out, and there it was. That 1955 blue and beige Chevy was in front of our house. Mr. Clark had stopped by to readdress the job opportunity with my parents and me. Well, needless to say, the following week, just a handful of Council High students joined the workforce at NASA. I retired 35 and a half years later as the first African-American deputy manager of human resources at the Marshall Space Flight Center. A footprint. Mingo Clark could have been the creator for vision and mission statements used by many companies today. He had a vision in that he could see an opportunity where one may have not existed. He could see the potential in his students that they probably did not even realize they had. And he would take these two traits and begin his mission to develop every ounce of that student's ability. Council High had a stellar trades and industrial education program. We participated in a statewide competition that covered a variety of occupational areas. It also included a talent contest. And at Mr. Clark's urging, I agreed to participate by singing. As he often did, he'd walk up to me at school one day and he said, Joiner, he always called me by my last name, have you picked out a song? And I said, yes. And he said, well, what is it? And I told him, which now I don't even remember what it was. He just walked away. The next day, he saw me in the hallway again, and he said, Joiner, why don't you try singing Misty by Johnny Mathis? Another footprint. I said, okay. I won the state championship with that song, and Council High won the state. His vision was for us to be our best all of the time, and his mission was to create some of the best employees any company could have had in their workforce. All he needed was a small opening. He would seize the opportunity, grab a bunch of students, push them through that opening, have us do whatever needed to be done, and made us happy doing the work. A footprint. Many years ago, my oldest daughter was walking the halls of Johnson High School. This man walked up to her and said, Crawford, how are your parents? She said, fine, and he just walked away. She found out later that was Mingo Clark. 5 years from that point, my youngest daughter was at Johnson High, and this man walked up to her and said, Little Crawford, how are your parents? She said, fine, but by then she knew it was Mingo Clark. For those of you who knew him, you knew he had a lovely, tenor voice. He would often sing at assemblies at Council High. Old Man River was a song that the student body loved to hear him sing. It was from the Broadway show and later movie Showboat. That song that we did not realize, we just enjoyed it because it was whimsical, had so many footprints. He would sing loudly, lift that barge, tote that bale. A footprint. The lesson was for us to work hard. Get a little drunk and you'll land in jail. The lesson was a challenge for us to stay out of trouble. And finally, in an almost mournful voice, he would say, I get weary and sick of trying. I'm tired of living and afraid of dying. But Old Man River, he just keeps rolling along. That lesson, that footprint, was for us to never, ever give up. Follow the footprints. Follow Jesus. To Miss Lou and the Clark family, thank you for this opportunity to speak about the service of Mingo Clark to the Huntsville educational community. I am humbled and honored to be here today, and I am humbled and honored that Mingo Clark was instrumental in my life early on, but not just me. He worked with students who became accountants, surgical nurses, engineers, career military, electricians, any other number of occupations too numerous to mention. He also was instrumental in pushing my husband forward a little bit. I pray God's blessings on each of you throughout your bereavement. I leave you with encouraging words from this little song that we sing in our church sometimes. It goes, guide my feet while I run this race, so I won't have to run this race in vain. Footprints. Hold my hand while I run this race, so I don't have to run this race in vain. May God bless you individually and collectively.